In the after-hours hushed tonight of sterling innovations, a janitor and his small son sweep a marble lobby no one notices. The boy looks up, courage trembling in his voice. "We can leave, Dad. We don't belong here." The words float across glass and chrome straight to the CEO, lingering unseen beyond a column. She came hunting negligence. Instead, she finds quiet nobility. In that fragile instant, hierarchy cracks. Shame rises suddenly, and a buried decision from her first month in power claws back to life. The elevator doors close between two worlds, slicing the lobby of Sterling Innovations Tower into halves that rarely touched. On one side, the scent of expensive perfume lingered where Callista Monroe had just stepped out, her platinum hair catching the fluorescent glow, red dress sharp as a signature. On the other, the faint smell of industrial cleaner followed Elias Carter as he pushed his cart toward the service corridor, his worn badge catching the light for just a second. Their eyes met across the marble expanse for one heartbeat. Two people occupying the same building, but living on different planets. The name tag on his chest read Carter in faded letters. A ghost of the engineering badge he once wore 3 floors up. Elias was 36, but looked older under the harsh lights. Tall and lean with hands that remembered precision work, even as they gripped a mop handle. His eyes carried the particular exhaustion of single fathers who work nights. A weariness softened only when his son appeared. The tower stretched 70 floors into the sky, all glass and chrome and ambition. Its marble lobby reflecting everything except the people who kept it clean. Security cameras blinked red from ceiling corners, recording reflections but rarely seeing. Somewhere far above, the executive elevator hummed upward, reserved for the top floor. Down here, the service door opened with a magnetic click that sounded like a lock. Leo Carter was 8 years old and small for his age, clutching a one-armed robot named Spark against his chest. The toy was missing its right arm, the plastic stump, a reminder that broken things could still function if you love them enough. He wore a second-hand jacket 2 sizes too big, the one his mother had bought before the illness took her, back when she still believed in warm winters. The boy had her eyes wide and perceptive, noticing everything his father tried to shield him from. In his backpack, folded small and hidden beneath a sketchbook of robot drawings, was an eviction notice he had peeled off their apartment door that morning. He had not told his father yet. 8-year-olds learn early how to carry secrets that weigh more than they do. Callista Monroe stood in her corner office 70 floors above the marble, looking down at a city that glittered like a circuit board. She was 34 and had been CEO for 18 months, a tenure marked by quarterly earnings that climbed and a staff that flinched. Her hair fell in platinum waves that cost more than Elias made in a week. She wore power like the red dress she favored, sharp collars and sharper decisions. The board praised her efficiency. Her assistants learned to leave reports on her desk without making eye contact. On her desk sat an unopened letter, the handwriting shaky but deliberate. From Adelaide Turner, her late mentor who had built Sterling Innovations on the principle that technology served people, not the other way around. The letter had arrived the week before Adelaide died. Callista had read it once, then buried it under quarterlies. Numbers are nothing without people. Adelaide had written in her failing hand. The word sat like a pebble in an expensive shoe, uncomfortable but easily ignored. The nights followed a rhythm Elias and Leo knew by heart. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Elias picked up his son from the discount childcare center 3 blocks from the tower. The kind with peeling paint and tired staff who still tried. They ate sandwiches on the roof of the parking garage, sitting on the concrete ledge with their legs dangling, watching the city lights turn on like stars in a sky they could never quite reach. Leo asked questions about the engineering work his father used to do, and Elias answered with the patience of a man who still loved the science, even if the company no longer wanted his mind, only his hands. Inside Elias's jacket pocket, folded into quarters, was a leather notebook with worn edges, the kind engineers used before tablets took over. He still sketched in it during breaks, designing improvements to the building's aging systems, water reclamation loops, and energy-efficient motor retrofits that no one would ever see. Old hospital bills from his wife's final months were tucked between the pages. Amounts that turned breathable numbers into suffocation. A past due rent notice had slipped from Leo's backpack earlier, and the boy had quickly hidden it again, his small face tight with worry. He thought he was concealing. Ellis had seen it anyway. Fathers always do. In her glass tower office, Callista ate dinner alone. Catered salmon gone cold while she reviewed emails. One from Vivian Pierce, the CFO, suggested another round of cost reductions for the next quarter. Another from a board member asked about streamlining maintenance operations. The letter from Adelaide sat beneath the stack, corner visible, handwriting like an accusation. Leadership that forgets faces will soon be faceless. Adelaide had written near the end, her script shaking with medication tremors. Callista pushed it deeper into the pile. Numbers were easier than people. People had needs that complicated spreadsheets. The storm arrived without warning, the way autumn rains do in cities that think they control weather. Lightning turned the tower's glass walls into a strobe show, and thunder rattled the marble lobby hard enough to make the fluorescent lights flicker. The main elevator bank died mid-cycle, trapping maintenance crews above and leaving the executive floors unattended. The night shift janitors left early, worried about flooded streets and subway closures. Only Elias stayed, partly out of need for the overtime pay, partly because he had nowhere urgent to get to except a cold apartment with an eviction notice on the door. Leo sat on a bench near the service corridor, swinging his legs and holding Spark, whispering to the one-armed robot about superheroes who save a day. From the executive floor above, voices drifted down through the ventilation system, sharp and cutting. Callista was berating her assistant over a presentation with a formatting error, her voice rising with each sentence until it became something brittle and frightening. Leo gripped his father's hand. "She's scary," he whispered. Elias knelt beside his son, his voice gentle. "She carries this whole building on her shoulders," he said, nodding up at the glass and steel that seemed to press down like accumulated weight. "That makes people hard sometimes." It happened fast, the way small disasters do. Leo, hungry and distracted, fumbled the lunchbox he had been holding, and it clattered across the marble floor, lid flying open, spilling cheap cafeteria food across the perfect tile. The container skidded to a stop inches from Callista's shoe, the red sole stark against the white marble. She had emerged from the elevator without them noticing, her expression already forming the irritation of interrupted schedules. But then she saw Elias drop to his knees without hesitation, gathering every scrap with quiet dignity. "No excuses, no complaint. I apologize for the disruption," he said simply, his voice steady, as if spilled food were just another problem, requiring a methodical solution. For reasons Callista could not name, she watched the janitor's hands as he cleaned, noting the precision in the movements, the way he checked twice for stray crumbs, the small nod of satisfaction when the floor gleamed again. In her mind, a camera angle shifted and she saw the scene differently. The stain became the outline of something larger. The mop in his hands transformed into a brush, painting order back into chaos. The moment passed quickly, but she filed away his name. The badge that read Carter, a detail that would matter later. The lobby emptied as midnight approached, the rain outside softening to a whisper against glass. The marble floor reflected everything now, polished to a mirror finished by Elias's careful work. Leo stood near the wall, staring up at the Sterling Innovations logo, the chrome letters that spelled a promise he could not quite read. His small voice broke the silence, trembling with a child's terrible honesty. "We can leave, Dad. We don't belong here." Elias sat down his mop and turned to his son, his expression gentle but firm. He knelt so they were eye level, his hands resting on Leo's shoulders. "We belong anywhere we give our whole heart," he said quietly, the words more for himself than the boy. "This floor is clean because we made it that way. That's belonging." Callista had returned to retrieve her laptop, forgotten in the rush to leave before the storm worsened. She stood behind a marble column 30 feet away, completely hidden, her hand frozen on the briefcase handle. The words reached her across the empty space, slipping through the gaps in the architecture, finding her where she stood in her expensive heels and her armor of certainty. She watched the janitor and his son in the reflection of the polished floor. Three figures overlapping, two worlds and one value meeting on a surface that showed everything if you looked close enough. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard, stepped backward, her heels making almost no sound on the carpet edge. The image stayed with her as she retreated to the elevator, her mind replaying the scene, belonging as an action, not a privilege. The question arrived unwelcomed. Who truly belonged in this building? The people whose names filled the executive roster, or the man who polished marble at midnight and taught his son about dignity? Morning light cut through Callista's office with accusatory brightness. She sat at her desk, staring at the empty space where her coffee usually sat untouched, and made a decision that felt like standing at a cliff edge. She opened her computer and typed a query into the HR portal. Carter, Maintenance Department. The results loaded slowly, and when they did, her breath caught. Elias Carter, Mechanical Engineer, Level 2, hired 6 years ago. Specialization, closed-loop water systems, and energy-efficient motor design. 3 co-attents on file. Lead engineer on the Greywater Reclamation Project that saved the building $40,000 annually in water costs. Employment status terminated. Date 18 months ago. Authorization, signature, C. Monroe. She had signed the layoff papers during her first month as CEO. A stack of terminations labeled redundancy elimination approved in a conference room where faces were reduced to numbers and contributions became line items. She had cut 20 positions that day, tightening operations like Adelaide had always warned her not to do. The signature at the bottom of Elias Carter's termination form was hers. A flourish of efficiency that had erased a mind and left only hands. The archive from Adelaide's office arrived in a file box that afternoon, delivered by an assistant who did not make eye contact. Inside were letters, project reports, sticky notes covered in Adelaide's enthusiastic script. .1 folder held the original proposal for the Greywater system. Elias Carter's name prominent on the cover page. Adelaide's handwritten note in the margin. This man sees infrastructure as living systems. Protect him. Callista had eliminated him instead. That same morning, 3 blocks away, Leo peeled another eviction notice from their apartment door before his father woke. The landlord had stopped accepting promises. The boy folded the paper small and hid it in his backpack next to his drawings of robots, mechanical guardians who fixed broken things. In the building lobby, Elias paused at the vending machine, which had been broken for weeks. He opened the service panel with a borrowed screwdriver, twisted 2 wires together with a paper clip and a piece of copper he had saved from a motor repair, and the machine hummed back to life. A can dropped into the dispenser with a mechanical thunk that sounded like hope restarting. No one noticed except a security camera that recorded everything and remembered nothing. Callista pulled out Adelaide's letter that afternoon and read it completely this time, every shaking word. Leadership that forgets faces will soon be faceless. She looked at her reflection in the office window, the city behind her, and was not certain she recognized the person looking back. The collision happened in the lobby during lunch rush when executives and maintenance staff briefly occupied the same space before hierarchy reasserted itself. Bernie Cross, the chief operating officer, stood near the elevators with 2 board members, his hair gelled to corporate perfection, his suit gray and expensive, his smile the kind that never reached eyes. He spotted Leo sleeping on a lobby bench, the boy's head resting on his backpack. Spark clutched against his chest. Bernie's voice carried across marble with calculated volume. Is this a company or a daycare center? Scattered laughter from nearby staff. The nervous kind people make when power bullies. Ellis appeared from the service corridor, his face carefully neutral, approaching with the measured caution of people who know their place in hierarchies they did not design. I apologize. Child Care Center had an emergency closure. Safety regulations require he stay in a visible area. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly as he gently lifted Leo, carrying his son toward the maintenance closet where supplies were stored and people were hidden. Callista emerged from the executive elevator at that exact moment, her heels striking marble like a gavel. Her eyes swept the scene, cataloging faces and cruelty in one glance. She walked directly to Bernie, her voice ice wrapped in silk. "Bernie, I don't recall human dignity being removed from our company values. Perhaps you could point me to the memo where we voted to mock children." The lobby went silent. Bernie's smile flickered and died. The board members found urgent reasons to check their phones. The crowd dispersed like water encountering stone, and Callista turned to Elias, her expression softening in a way her staff had not seen in months. "Mr. Carter, could you spare a moment?" They spoke quietly near the windows, Leo dozing against his father's shoulder. Elias answered her questions with the economy of someone used to being interrupted, sketching his life in short strokes, his wife's illness, the layoff, the need to keep working, the impossibility of childcare on a janitor's wages. He did not ask for pity, did not perform suffering. He simply stated facts like an engineer presenting data. Callista found herself listening with an attention she usually reserved for quarterly projections. And somewhere in the conversation, she smiled genuinely for the first time in months. Respect formed slowly, the way steel cools into strength. The offer came 2 days later, delivered in person because Callista had learned that some conversations require looking at faces, not screens. "Mr. Carter, I would like to offer you a consulting position in building systems, part-time initially, working on a closed-loop graywater retrofit for the entire complex." She watched his expression carefully, saw the disbelief followed by caution. "You should know I was the one who authorized your layoff 18 months ago. I made that decision without understanding what I was cutting. This is not charity. This is correction." Elias stood motionless for a long moment, his janitor's uniform suddenly feeling like a costume he had worn too long. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "I'm a janitor now. I need to climb back using my own hands." Callista nodded slowly, understanding the dignity and the refusal. "You've already climbed," she said. "We just need to place the ladder correctly." The workshop took shape in a converted storage room in the basement, cleared of obsolete equipment and filled with drafting tables, pipe sections, and Leo's drawings taped to the walls. Elias worked in the early mornings before his shift, designing a system that would reclaim water from the building's cooling towers, filter it through activated carbon beds, and recirculate it for non-potable uses. Leo helped label pipes with colored tape, his 8-year-old precision, earning quiet praise from his father. Callista visited without her heels, listening instead of directing, learning the language of systems from a man who spoke it fluently. 2 young janitors, Zane Miller and Finn Howard, watched at first with suspicion, then with growing respect as Elias taught them water conservation techniques, showing them how their work contributed to larger systems. The word Mr. Carter started appearing in conversations. A small shift in how a name was spoken, respect accumulating like compound interest. Leo heard it first, his eyes going wide, turning to his father with a smile that broke through weeks of worry. Callista found herself working differently, asking questions before issuing orders, seeking faces behind numbers. The change was subtle at first, noticed only by her assistant, who stopped flinching during meetings. But organizations sense shifts in pressure, the way buildings feel earthquakes before they become visible. And Sterling Innovations began to exhale. After months of holding its breath, the trap was engineered with precision, laid by a man who understood that power threatened generates defense mechanisms. Bernie Cross had watched his influence eroding as Callista's management style softened, had seen respect flowing toward a janitor turned consultant, and decided that correction required sabotage. He approached Oliver Grant, the chief of security, a man whose loyalty could be purchased with promises of budget increases and immunity from scrutiny. The plan was simple enough to be cruel. Plant a faulty valve module in Elias's test system, one designed to fail catastrophically, then frame the failure as negligence. Oliver provided access codes and camera blind spots. Bernie personally installed the sabotage component during a night shift. His hands gloved, his confidence absolute. The system would flood, equipment would be damaged, and Elias Carter would be arrested for criminal negligence and possible corporate espionage. Everything would return to a proper hierarchy, where janitors stayed invisible and CEOs did not smile. The alarm shrieked at 2 in the morning, cutting through the building like a blade. Water exploded from the test system's main feed line, flooding the basement workshop, shorting electrical panels, and sending maintenance staff scrambling. Security cameras captured Elias running toward the breach. Not away, his hands moving to shut off valves with practice speed, but Oliver Grant was faster. His security team surrounding Elias before the water stopped flowing. Their faces hard with scripted certainty. "Sir, you're under arrest for criminal damage to company property and unauthorized system access." Leo was there, having fallen asleep in the workshop office. He woke to shouting and lights, saw his father's hands being cuffed, and something in his 8-year-old chest broke open into screaming. He didn't do anything. He fixed his things. The boy's voice echoed off concrete walls, clutching spark against his chest. The one-armed robot, suddenly seeming like a prophecy of breaking, Callista arrived, still wearing her gym clothes. Having received an emergency alert on her phone, she moved through the scene with the focused calm of someone who had learned to see details when others saw chaos. "Release him," she said, her voice quiet but absolute. Oliver began to protest, presenting the supposed evidence, the security logs showing Elias near the system at the moment of failure. Bernie appeared from the elevator, his face arranged in concern, offering commentary about proper protocols and the appearance of impropriety. Callista listened to none of it. She pulled out her phone and played a video file, one retrieved from a camera angle. No one thought to monitor the service corridor's old backup system that facilities management had forgotten to disconnect. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Bernie Cross entering the workshop 3 hours earlier, carrying a component case. His movements furtive and deliberate. The timestamp was damning. The act was undeniable. The silence that followed felt like gravity reversing. Oliver Grant went pale. Bernie's rehearsed expression collapsed into something approaching panic. Callista's voice cut through the water, dripping quiet like a scalpel through tissue. "The efficiency you worship, Bernie, turns out to be cheap and cruel. I think we're done here." The hearing convened the next morning in the glass conference room on the 65th floor. Sunlight pouring through windows that turned the city into a jury of witnesses. Vivian Pierce attended as CFO, Andrea Collins as legal counsel, Constance Hale from Human Resources, each bringing documentation and the weight of institutional process. The evidence stacked like a prosecutor's dream. Security logs showing Bernie's unauthorized access. Fingerprint residue on the sabotage valve. Email threads between Bernie and Oliver discussing how to contain the Carter situation. And the video footage that required no interpretation. Ellis sat across the table, still wearing his maintenance uniform. Leo beside him, clutching spark. When invited to speak, Ellis's words were measured and precise. "The system tells the truth. If I was negligent, it would show. If I was not, that would also show. I trust systems more than words." The simplicity of the statement settled over the room like snow, covering complexity with clarity. Oliver Grant confessed first, his loyalty to Bernie evaporating under legal scrutiny, his voice shaking as he detailed the plan. Bernie attempted deflection, then blame-shifting, then angry justification about maintaining corporate order and preventing bleeding heart policies. But the evidence was a closed system that required no interpretation. And his words found no traction. Callista spoke last, and what she said surprised even her legal counsel. "I bear responsibility for creating a culture where this seemed necessary. My decisions 18 months ago prioritized efficiency over humanity, and that permission structure enabled this moment. Bernie Cross and Oliver Grant are terminated immediately and will face appropriate legal consequences. But I need the board to understand. I contributed to the conditions that made this cruelty feel rational." The statement hung in the air, radical in its honesty, and several board members shifted uncomfortably. Accountability from the top is rarer than profit, more unsettling than loss. But Adelaide Turner's letter had taught Callista that leadership without faces becomes faceless, and she would rather be human than untouchable. Leo launched himself from his chair and wrapped his arms around his father's waist. Elias folded around his son, and Callista stood nearby, respecting the boundary of their reunion, understanding that some circles do not require additional entry. The workshop reopened 1 week later, the water damage repaired. The test system rebuilt with components that bore Elias's specifications and Leo's careful labeling. The closed-loop graywater reclamation system 2.0 came together in sections. Circulation pumps that hummed with efficient electricity consumption. Activated carbon filters regenerated through backflow cycles. Leak sensors connected to a minimal control panel that anyone could understand. UV sterilization units that caught light like small suns. The water flowed clear and purposeful, a circle that cleaned itself by design. Leo stood on a step stool, carefully attaching a new arm to spark. The component crafted from a piece of recycled plastic tubing Elias had saved from the system installation. The robot's silhouette became complete. Symmetry restored. The metaphor not lost on anyone watching. The recognition ceremony happened on a Tuesday evening. The entire company assembled in the main lobby where this story began. Callista stood at a temporary podium, Elias and Leo beside her, both wearing clothes that fit properly now, bought from wages that reflected skill rather than invisibility. That Callista's speech was brief because the best apologies are actions, not rhetoric. This company once fired a man it should have been learning from. Tonight, we correct that. Elias Carter is now Chief Maintenance Engineer for Building Systems with full authority over infrastructure decisions. The applause started slowly, then built like water, reaching pressure, filling the marble space with sound that felt like cleansing. Additionally, Sterling Innovations is establishing the Adelaide Turner Fund, providing scholarships and support for single parents working non-traditional shifts and implementing the Bring Your Child Safely program, because no parent should have to hide their family to keep their job. Leo looked up at his father, eyes bright, and Elias rested a hand on his son's shoulder, his expression saying everything his engineering training had taught him to leave unspoken. Callista watched them, remembering the night she had overheard. Belonging defined as an action, and understood that leadership was the same, a daily choice, not a title. The seasons turned as seasons do, indifferent to human drama, but marking its passage. Spring arrived with tentative warmth, and the small apartment where Elias and Leo now lived reflected the change. Clean, organized, a succulent plant on the windowsill, catching morning light, drawings of robots and water systems taped to walls that belonged to them now. No eviction notices, no hidden debts, just the quiet domesticity of stability earned and maintained. Callista visited on a Saturday afternoon. Arriving without corporate armor, carrying a model building kit for Leo, robotics components that snapped together like small prayers for the future, they ate spaghetti around a table that wobbled slightly, drank lemonade from mismatched glasses, and talked about Leo's new school, Astrid Academy. Astrid Lane had noted his exceptional spatial reasoning and recommended advanced placement. As evening settled, Leo whispered to his father loud enough for Callista to hear, his voice carrying the relief of a child who no longer has to carry secret worries. "We don't have to leave anymore." Elias's eyes filled, his voice thick with emotion he had held back for years. "We have a home anywhere respect is practiced, not just promised." The apartment dishwasher hummed in the background. Water circulating through its own small loop, cleaning and draining and starting over. A sound like a heartbeat steady and sure on the shelf above Leo's desk. Spark stood with both arms now. The repaired robot keeping watch over drawings of buildings and systems. Mechanical hopes sketched in colored pencil. The future looked like this. Small, warm, and built by hands that had never stopped working even when no one was watching. Callista caught Elias's eyes across the simple table, and something passed between them. Not romance, but something deeper, a respect that might slowly grow into affection if given time and truth. She had learned that belonging was earned in daily increments, that leadership meant listening before deciding, that the people keeping floors clean might be the ones who understand foundations best. Adelaide's letter lived now in a frame on Callista's office wall, the shaking handwriting a reminder that numbers are nothing without people, and people are everything without pretense. Outside, the city glowed against darkening sky, towers of glass, and ambition reaching upward. Somewhere in that forest of light, Sterling Innovations stood among its peers, its systems circulating water in efficient loops, designed by a man who had never stopped seeing infrastructure as living. Its lobby, floors polished by respect that worked both directions. Its future shaped by the lesson that you belong wherever you give your whole heart. And home exists anywhere dignity is practiced daily. The rest is just architecture necessary, but insufficient. Shelter that means nothing if those inside remain unseen.